We are live, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Division to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Today, our panel is formed with Linda McFadden and Kent Silent, and my name is Harvey Diamond. The City of Winnipeg Assessment Department is represented by Ryan Valderrama, and our Administrative Secretary is Jaswinder Kumar. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note that you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it's your turn, you will be admitted to the meeting room. Kindly follow along the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. And once the hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by our board. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration, and makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at the hearing and issues a written order that would be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or to classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, information to do so will be concluded with a board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by any questions. Each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if we wish to do so. Once all the evidence upon an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the board's decision by written mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will form part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing items 1 to 9 on the docket. Mr. Kumar, you can please affirm the applicant and the assessor in this hearing, please, at this time. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Ryan Valderrama.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name. Jared Story. Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to let you know, Mr. Chair, we have received a 15-1 for item number 1.
Okay, we'll go with number 1 now. And sorry about the delay, everybody. I don't know, it wasn't on my schedule, and but we are ready now. I've got everything before me. So, Mr. Valderrama, we are now on 85 Fiorento Street, and you can proceed when you're ready.
That item is being withdrawn, Mr. Chair.
Oh, number 1's withdrawn?
Yeah.
Okay. So which one are we hearing first then, Mr.
You can start from item number 2.
Number 2, okay. Number 2 then, we can proceed. And that's 1608 326 Talbot Avenue. Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready.
I'll just access that one, Mr. Chair. It's 326 Talbot.
Okay. I've
Is
got
it
it.
that one?
That's item agenda number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, 326 Talbot. That's correct, Mr. Valderrama.
326 Talbot. All right. Okay, then the first item that we're hearing today has a file number of 22-1608. It has a roll number of 14091678000 at 26 Talbot Avenue. The roll year we're dealing with is 2023, and we're using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. There's a split assessment on this property. The first assessed value is, the first assessment has an assessed value of $440 with a classification of residential 1, and a liability of grant. The second assessment has an assessed value of $553,000 as a classification of residential 2 and a liability of grant. And the total assessed value is $996,000. The property is a commercial row house with 2 buildings, 2 to 6, with an actual year built and effective year built of 1978. It has 9 suites with 9 outdoor parking. The zoning is residential 2 with a land area of 14,548 square feet, plan area of 3,898 square feet, basement area of 3,898 square feet, gross floor area of 11,694 square feet. And on page 3 is where the photo of the subject property. On the next page, I do have the income valuation summary. Again, the number of units is 9. There are 9 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,060.18. And right below it is the income valuation workup. For the first one, there's again split income workup on this one. The first one has the residential 1 classification and liability, or the 10G. It has a gross potential rent of $50,889, a vacancy rate of 3.2%, which in dollars it is $1,628. It has an effective gross income of $49,261, an expense ratio of 56.86%. In dollars, that is $28,010. Has a net operating income of $21,251 using the capitalization rate of 4.8%. The capitalized income for this first assessment is $442,729 or $443,000 rounded. The next assessment, which is the 20G column, it has a gross potential rent of $63,611, has a vacancy rate of 3.2%. In terms of dollars, that is $2,036. Has an effective gross income of $61,575, using an expense rate of 56.86%. Expenses in dollars is $35,012. The net operating income is $26,563. Applying the capitalization rate of 4.8%, capitalized income is $553,396 or $553,000 rounded. On the next page, I do have a few rent comparables. Excuse me. The first one is located at 423 Gateway Road. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,072. The second one is located at 1415 Rothsay Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,243. The next one is located at 2 Oak Park Walk. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,256. And the last one is located at 650 Kimberly Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,114. On the next page is the map of the subject property and the comparable rents. And on page 7, I do have the capitalization rates chart. If I may just go through this, Mr. Chair, and this will be applied to the other properties that we'll be hearing today, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
A direct capitalization rate is used to convert a property's single year of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rates can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For the 2023 general assessment, using April 1st, 2021 as the reference date, Capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time-adjusted to April 1st, 2021. The assessed values produced by the application of these model-generated capitalization rates were compared to sale prices, and assessment price ratios were calculated. The resulting ratio statistics for assessment and taxation departments' income-producing models satisfy the standards specified and set forth in the Standard on Ratio Studies, approved in April 2013 and as published by the International Association of Assessing Officers. ATD's capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate market reports from Colliers International Canada, CBRE National Research, and Cushman and Wakefield. The following chart compares ATD's capitalization rates, with the published rates by fitting ATD's rates into the property type categories used in these reports. ATD's property type classes are more comprehensive so that they cover every property in the property type in the city. The 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by ATD for 60% of the parcels within the specified property type. In many cases, the published rates fall within the 20th and 80th percentiles, indicating the tenability of the capitalization rates derived by ATD. If we go down to the farther down the chart, there's the multifamily section of the chart. All of them have a range of 4.8 to 5.6. I should clarify, all property type in the multifamily have a capitalization rate ranging from 4.8 to 5.6%. And on the next page, I do have the capitalization rate evidence. Again, Mr. Chair, if I may go through this, this will be for this one, this will be applied to the rest of the properties we will be hearing today, Mr. Chair.
That's fine. If it applies to all of them, that's great to hear it once we can remember. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So capitalization rate evidence, the following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They're not meant to be comparable specific to subject property. Net operating income has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. Capital rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. The first one is located at 2390 McPhillips. It was sold on October 9th, 2020. It was sold for $19.4 million. It has 90 suites with a year built and effective age of 2015. This sale translates to $215,556 per suite and has a calculated cap rate of 4.79%. The second one is located at 700 St. Mary's, sold on April 7th, 2020. It was sold for $1,035,000. It has 9 suites. It has a year built and effective age of 1961. This sale translates to $115,000 per suite, and it has a calculated cap rate of 3.6%. The next one is located at 203 Bertrand. It was sold on June 14, 2019 for $925,000. It has 9 suites, a year built and effective age of 1963. This sale translates to $102,778 per suite. It has a calculated cap rate of 4.77%. The next one is located at 555 Corridon. It was sold on November 26, 2018. It has a sale price of $1,575,000. It has 16 suites with a year built and effective age of 1955. It is translating to $98,438 per suite. and it has a calculated cap rate of 5.74%. Next one is located at 677 Maryland. It was sold on December 15, 2020. It was sold for $2.4 million. It has 32 suites with a year built of 1913 and an effective age of 1972. It translates to $75,000 per suite, and a calculated cap rate for this is 5.5%. The last one is located at 32 Arden. It was sold on March 1st, 2019 for $2.875 million. It has 23 suites, was built in 1969 with an effective age of 1984. This translates to $125,000 per suite, and the calculated cap rate is 5.05%. And if we go down, the next part is where the 2020 income and expense information, and that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Story, do you have any questions of Mr. Valderrama?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, we're predominantly talking about cap rate for a majority of these properties today. So I'll limit my questions to cap rate, and then I'll ask that some of the comments that I make, where appropriate, follow through to the balance of our docket. So I will try to be brief. Mr. Valderrama, you're aware that this property is indeed social housing. It is indeed a what we'll call a row house, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does the model adjustment for social housing?
I'm not particularly aware of if the model is adjusting particularly on social housing. However, this is coded as a row housing, so I would believe that the model is taking into account that it is a row housing.
So the model does consider that it's a row house, and can we agree that typically a row house represents a different economic opportunity than what we'll call a more typical vertical apartment? It's less efficient to build outward than it is to build up. So typically a row house it has more infrastructure to maintain, more roofing. So it typically would represent a higher
Excuse me, Mr. Story, if you could just ask questions, you're basically giving evidence now, which you have an opportunity of doing in a little while. So please try to confine yourself to questions this time.
Mr. Valderrama, can we agree that a row house in the eyes of the market would represent a riskier investment? Is that fair?
I have no information or any knowledge with regard to what the market is looking at in terms of risky or riskier assets, if that's the question, okay. Mr. Chair.
That's fine. Now it says number of stories 2 through 7, but that's not correct. It's 2 stories, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And wood frame construction, can we agree that that would typically represent greater risk to an owner? Is that fair?
Again, I have no information with regard to if it's gonna be a risk investment for the owner.
Okay, and the workup is all model derived, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the 4.8 cap rate that the city is applying here, that's at the very low end of the 20th percentile. Is that correct?
It is at the lower end of the 20th, or which is the 20th percentile of the range, correct, of the 60% of the properties that we have in our records.
Okay, and that rate would be below typically what the brokers are showing us on your table for multifamily. Is that correct?
If we look at the table, yes, it looks like it is below the what the external sources that we have found. However, again, we I don't know how much or how many properties they have calculated these cap rates from or derived it from, but we have I believe we have a lot, or we have more properties included in our range.
Oh, okay, so can you give us a sense of how many row houses were included in the model's range?
I don't have that information.
Okay, that's okay, and then I'm just gonna go through your cap rate evidence, and again, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna ask that these comments or questions follow through. Mr. Valderrama, your first, and I'm only generally concerned with 1, 2, and let's call it 6. So McPhillips, St. Mary's, and Arden. 2390 McPhillips, are you aware, Mr. Valderrama, that at the time of sale, the rents that were being generated in that private apartment were below CMHC?
No, I'm not aware. However, they are all based on the information provided to us.
Right, so
The
the
income and expense information, sorry.
okay, so the actuals were below CMHC, and are you aware that the vacancy was similarly below what CMHC would call an average vacancy for the city of Winnipeg, and also for the area of Templeton Sinclair that we're in with this property? Are you aware of that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Yes. So at the time of sale, 2390, based on the actuals that we've seen, are indicating that the rents that are being achieved are lower than CMHC, and the vacancy is also lower than CMHC averages. Are you aware of that?
If it was reported in our income and expense mailer and it was used to calculate cap rate, then we are looking at this based on the formula given that we should use the NOI divided by the sale price. So that's how we calculated the cap rate on this one.
Okay, and in chief evidence, you haven't submitted any calculations as to how you came to your conclusions, have you?
The net operating income calculation is not included here. However, we used whatever is provided to us by the owner, or by the owner.
Okay. And can you agree with me, at least mathematically, that if the purchaser raised the rents and if vacancy went up accordingly, that cap rate would be a fair bit higher than 4.79? Can we agree on that?
It's an if, and it's a hypothetical scenario. So I mean, mathematically it could, but again, that is an if scenario and a hypothetical one, Mr. Chair.
Oh, well, no, it's not, because did you follow up with this property to see after acquisition if the purchaser raised the rents? Because that would affect
After the purchase?
Yeah.
We used information that were provided to us. So anything past the sale date, I don't think that would be used to calculate the cap rate, because we're using the NOI within or prior to the sale date.
Okay, can we agree though that occasionally a purchaser will purchase a property such as this knowing that there's an economic opportunity to raise the rents? Is that fair to say?
It's not fair for me to conclude anything with regard to that kind of scenario, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure what the motive or whatever the investor is looking at in the future, or after or past the sale of this property.
I'll just go quickly to 700 St. Mary's. Now, we can agree, I think, that this is an outlier based on the cap rate that you've calculated here. This would be very low, would it not?
Well, using the information provided to us and the sale price, the cap rate is the calc.
Okay, was this property exposed to the open market for sale?
I don't have that information. I'm not aware.
And are you aware,
or if it is?
did the owner, the purchaser, I should say, purchase this property with the intention to renovate?
Again, the intention may or may not be there during the time of sale. However, the sale price and the income and expense information that was submitted to us were used to calculate the cap rate on this one.
Okay, and then I noticed you said something in when you were reading the cap rate, this piece that's on every file that we'll see here today. You do talk about the standard on ratio studies that's set forth by the IAAO. Does the IAAO mention how sales ought to be investigated regarding exposure to the market, for example?
I don't have that information, sorry.
Chair, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Just briefly, I assume you haven't inspected this property,
No, I wasn't able to.
so you don't have any sense of the actual condition of the property?
I don't.
Because with the cap rate being on the low end, would it be reasonable for the board to assume that this would be a property that would be in very good condition if it was the cap rate was that low?
Cap rate could be determined by a lot of factors, Mr. Chair. It could be a mix of anything, or any variables, that may or may be, in this report. So I cannot determine or ascertain at 100% what model is looking at in order to assign a 4.8% cap on this one, Mr. Chair.
So generally with a cap rate though, if a property is in a prime area, we would expect it to have a lower cap rate, just like as a generalization. And if it's in an outlying area, we would expect it to have a higher cap rate. Is that reasonable to assume?
Location is one of the many factors that is being looked at or being considered by the model, I am assuming, and it is one of the factors, but it may not be the only factor that that may have given this, or may have put a 4.8% cap.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious again about this cap. Who chose the 4.8%? Is this just chosen by a model, or did you choose this?
In this case, it was a model generated cap rate, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Boardroom, I'm too curious why this property would be at the lowest end of the cap rates. I mean, 20% is a low rate. It shows this building will be better than most of the buildings in the city, would it not?
Mm-hmm.
And it's on Talbot, which is not the best location insofar as location is concerned. Would you agree with that?
Well, Talbot is, well, it may not be the best, but I mean, it's not the worst there is. And the cap rate at the lower end, again, we may show that it is at the lower end of the of our cap rate study at 4.8%. However, we are between 20th percentile and 80th percentile. We're considering only 60% of our parcels in our records. So there could be more, and there could be maybe way lower cap rates there that's in the market that's not included in our cap rate chart.
For sure. But if it's at 20%, that would mean that it's that 80% of the properties would be inferior to this property, would it not?
20th percentile, it is at the lower end, correct? However,
yes,
it may,
that means
or
it's
may,
better than most properties of its type, is it not?
Well, there could, as I've mentioned earlier, there could be a lot of factors. It's not it's hard to tell whether a property is inferior or superior just because of the cap rate, just because of a low cap rate or a high cap rate, right? It could be because maybe income, if we compare the income, the net operating income to the sale price, maybe it's because it's just commanding a really low net operating income in the market. Or it was sold with, a higher sale price. So, I mean, is there any indication that the property is really inferior or superior because of those two factors, net operating income and the sale price? It's hard to tell, Mr. Chair, to be honest. So okay. I don't directly relate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Baldwin, that's fine. I think you answered the best you could, but my vantage point, I think, is that it appears that it might be an aggressive cap rate.
And to add to it, Mr. Chair, if I may, the aggressiveness or conservativeness of assignment of these cap rates is, I mean, looking at operating income, net operating income, and the sale price alone, it's hard to determine the inferiority and superiority of a property based on a low cap rate or a high cap rate, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to, okay, that's fair. That's my questions then. So we'll see what Mr. Story has to say about that. And Mr. Story, you can proceed with your evidence then.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so as we've established, we are at 326 Talbot. This is a multi-building social housing complex. It has two-story wood frame structures. Now, just very important to point out, there's a property that relates to this property right next door, and then there's two towers that forms what I'm going to call sort of a family housing complex. So, and they are indeed on the south side of Talbot, between Stadacona and Allen. We would consider this Chalmers, probably best described as Elmwood, East Kelowna. Property was built in 1978. Gross floor area is 11,694 square feet. And the subject property has 5 2-bedroom suites and 4 3-bedroom suites for a total of 9 suites. And there is a 1-to-1 parking ratio, which is good. So there are 9 outdoor stalls. Okay, so in terms of our issues here, in the interest of narrowing them, obviously the rent is geared to income. So we look to the model rent, and it typically represents 75 to 80% of CMHC rents, which we do not dispute. We do not dispute the vacancy at 3.2%. That's fine. Where we are, where our issue lies on this property and on many of the properties today is on that cap rate. And that cap rate of 4.8% is extremely low in this market. So we've applied a cap rate of 6%, and we've considered the fact that it is social housing property with no history of economic profit. We consider that there are multiple buildings on site. Now, 2 buildings is not, we'll see some today that have 10 plus. That's going to be a greater concern. But multiple buildings is certainly an issue. Wood frame is certainly an issue. Location is considered. But we also consider directions from the Manitoba Municipal Board about how we ought to treat social housing. So you've all been provided with my cap rate study for apartments. This is a cap rate study that speaks to appropriate market apartment cap rates, and it is important because the direction that we're seeing from the municipal board is that an appropriate methodology for determining a cap rate or a market cap on social housing is to first take the what we'll call the cap rates in our market from the private market, and then adjust upward for certain factors that we may see. So just very quickly, I've provided you with the cap rate study, and I'll only do this once. So, and I'll try to summarize it as best I can. We've looked firstly in the research experiment cycle over cycle. We've looked to the brokers to first determine cap rate compression. We are typically seeing from April 1, 2018 to April 1, 2021. Compression of approximately 0 to 25 basis points. So our conclusions are indeed informed by that. We note that the brokers' tables are typically inclusive of what we're going to call higher grade investment style properties. And we are also aware that in at least one instance, they do include closing costs. When you include the closing costs, that has the effect of bringing the cap rate down by approximately 15 basis points from our understanding. But suffice to say, the cap rates that are being shown in our market for this cycle are, say, generally somewhere between 5 to 6%. The best assets being applied something like a 5% cap rate, and what we'll call the riskier but higher end investments being somewhere in the 6% range. There are also factors affecting cap rates that should be looked at on a site-specific basis. I alluded to a couple of them already. Building type and construction. So when we have multiple buildings, if we have garden-style apartments, if we have wood frame buildings, if we have stucco exteriors, these would all give pause to an ex-prudent purchaser, as they would typically lead to greater expenses in the long run. So we do consider that heritage status designation. Now we do have one property where that, bless you, we have one property where that's going to be a point of interest, but not a huge concern. So we'll talk about that. But heritage status is a factor that we consider. We consider building amenities. And when I talk about amenities, we're talking about in-suite laundry, balconies, outdoor spaces, larger suites. So something that we've seen in looking at the market cycle over cycle, there's a tenant preference for larger suites. Now, to an extent, when you see 4 and 5 bedroom suites that we see in some of these social housing assets, those typically would be purpose-built, and there may not be an appetite for that in the market, but certainly 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units would be considered favorable. And we are seeing that the smaller suites in our market now, based on the elevation to the vacancy, as we've included in our study, would represent a riskier proposition to an investor. We consider the number of suites, of course, so a very low number of suites. We're looking at one right now with 9 suites. If we look at the notion of proportional vacancy, if you have one vacant suite in a 9-unit apartment, that would make it almost impossible to maintain a market vacancy of 3.2%. I do note that the citywide average for vacancy in this cycle is 3.8%. So we've typically, for the purpose of our assignment today, we've captured any increased risk in the cap rate. Location and external factors, of course, is an issue. And we've alluded to the fact that, yes, indeed, Talbot would be considered, well, it would not be considered what's called a prime area for private investment at this time. We have included sales to support our conclusions. Now, 3 of these sales were actually included by the assessor, so I won't. I'll leave those be. But 2390 McPhillips, as I noted, we calculated that cap rate as the NOI was put to the market at 5%, which makes sense. However, in looking into that sale in greater detail, we did notice, as I mentioned, that the sales were below market at the time of sale, and they were escalated upon purchase. So that would indicate to us that the purchaser looked at this property and thought there was a top side potential on the income stream and adjusted accordingly. However, these are for private market apartments, but suffice it to say, we're typically seeing cap rates between 5.25% for the what we're calling 1999 plus, up to the properties that were built before 1946, and this would run all the way to the turn of the 20th century between 6.1 and 6.6. So our cap rate conclusions indicate 5.25 to in general 6.6, but that 6.6 is going to include the much older stock. In terms of how we view social housing cap rates, I've included in all the briefs that are subsidized properties. There's one that's private. I've included 2 board orders, Mr. Chair, and I'll just turn back very quickly to my chief evidence on Talbot. You can see board order A02-330. It's very similar situation to what we're dealing with today, where the assessor will say, well, we've changed the income quality, for example, in our model, and we've put it all the way to the lowest factor, so that should capture these issues. The agent in this case, this is a decision from 2002, suggested that no, there are additional risk factors that should be captured for social housing, and that there's these properties warrant a higher overall rate than conventional apartment properties. And I'm just reading from the decision that says the applicable rates tend to rise with the presence of each of the 4 characteristics attributable to these properties: low cost or low quality construction, advanced age, declining or blighted neighborhood, and low income tenancy. So that's in the first decision. And just to fast forward, the findings or the ruling of the board was to adjust that cap rate above the assessor's model by 100 basis points. In the second decision, also from 2002, they actually mentioned that these properties represent a riskier investment to a next prudent purchaser, and in that case, they adjust the cap rate by 150 basis points. So the issue that we'll be looking at today for many of these social housing properties is that the cap rate that the assessor is using, somewhere between 4.8, 5.05, is simply too low, and we have applied in this case a cap rate of no less than 6%, which I think is quite fair. So ultimately, on Talbot, with only the cap rate in dispute, we are suggesting the value at the reference date not exceed $797,000. And with that, I thank you and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Valderrama, if you have any questions, you can ask them now.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no questions either.
And I don't either, so that's okay. So we can go on then with our next property and just a minute, I'll get back to. Okay, so the next property is item number 3 on the docket, and that is 421 Thames Avenue. Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Okay, I'm on it, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1609. It has a roll number of 14083281200. The property is located at 421 Thames Avenue. Again, this property has a split assessment. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The first assessment has an assessed value of $2,559,000. It is a residential 2 with a liability of grant. And the second assessment has an assessed value of $488,000, has a classification of residential 1 and a liability of grant. The property is a commercial row house with 5 buildings, 1 to 2 stories, has an actual and effective year built of 1973. It has 25 suites. It is zoned as RMFM. It has a land area of 113,287 square feet, a planned area of 12,648 square feet, a basement area of 12,408 square feet, and a gross floor area of 37,464 square feet. On page 3 is the photo of the subject property. And on the next page, I do have the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 25 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,240.41. The first assessment which is the 10G column, has a gross potential rent of $59,540, a vacancy rate of 3.2%, which is $1,905 in terms of dollars, has an effective gross income of $57,635, applying expense ratio of 56.86% or $32,771. The net operating income is $24,864. Using the capitalization rate of 5.1%, the capitalized income is $487,529 or $488,000 rounded. The next assessment, the 20G column, has a gross potential rent of $312,583, has a vacancy rate of 3.2%, a vacancy in terms of dollars, that is $10,003, has an effective gross income of $302,580. Using the expense ratio of 56.86%, the expenses is $172,047. The net operating income would translate to $130,533. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.1%, the capitalized income is $2,559,471 or $2,559,000 rounded. On the next page are some rent comparables. I believe these are all the same from the previous one, Mr. Chair. These comparable rents are the same as the previous one, Mr. Chair. So I'll just,
That's fine.
saving us time, I'll just request that the discussion on the comparable rents from the previous one be applied on this one.
And that's fine. I've checked them over and I recall them. Go ahead.
Okay. And then the next page is the map of the subject property and the comparable rents. The next page is the capitalization rates chart. And on next page, I do have the capitalization rate evidence or the sales. And Beginning page 9 is where the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Story, any questions?
I do. So we're only talking about the cap rate. So again, I'll limit my questions. Mr. Valderrama, I guess my question, well, firstly, my first question, I should have asked this in the last one. There's a class code 10, so there's a split income stream. Can you tell me why there's a split income stream on this property?
I believe it's just because one of them is a residence of probably a caretaker. I'm not sure without really inspecting the property. Yeah, I would just assume that it is for a caretaker or something like that. But I have no further information with regard to the 10 residential one.
And that's fine, because mathematically it doesn't really make much of a difference, but I wonder if in the model, because we don't know all the intricacies of the model, but having a split code, does that affect the model a little? I'm trying to determine how this, once again, we've got an extremely low cap rate. So is that a factor that affects the model?
It's just a percentage calculated in terms of either units or area.
Okay.
So it's more of like splitting it.
Have you ever visited this property?
As I mentioned, no, I wasn't able to inspect this.
Okay. And it has many of the same features that we looked at previously, but I suppose it's a similar vintage to the previous property. So I'm trying to determine how the cap rate is slightly different. Does the model, do you know if the number of buildings affects the model? In this case, there are 5, in the previous there were 2. Does that have any bearing on what the model generates?
Again, there could be a lot of factors, location, size, age, among others. So how the model has given weight to any of those or any other factors I didn't mention, I am not aware.
Yeah, final question. This entire assessment was model created, correct?
Yes, it is model derived.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Seelan?
No questions. My questions have been answered, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no question.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Valderrama, I'm just wondering why would the model put a 5.1% cap rate on this property and the property we just heard before, 4.8? Do you have any?
I'm assuming, I mean, I cannot assume, but I have no information, to be honest. However, the only information that sticks out to me, number of suites, probably 25 compared to the previous one, which is smaller. I'm not sure with the land area, but then, yeah, I guess it's more on size. However, is it putting a lot on that one? I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. That's my question. Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, okay, we're at 421 Thames. Again, we're still in the same general location we looked at previously. I'm simply disputing the cap rate once again. The rents are rent geared to income, so the model has, I think, appropriately adjusted them downward. That's okay. The expense ratio is also is not in dispute here, 56.9, though it may be a touch low. We are accepting it for the purpose of our exercise today. So the crux of our issue is, again, that cap rate. We're suggesting that if the market cap rates are somewhere between 5 and 6, then this property, based on what we know about it, based on the fact that it is social housing, it appears to be purpose-built. There are many buildings on site. There's some locational factors that we might consider. We believe that a 6% cap rate is, for this one, I will suggest you it might be slightly optimistic, given the number of buildings, but we're okay with 6%, and that is what we've applied. You'll see later on today that some of the properties that have multiple buildings like this, we've gone a touch higher at 6.25. But I suppose in reviewing this property, 6% is what we've elected to apply. So we're consistent with the previous property. It should represent a similar opportunity with a similar risk profile as the previous property that we discussed. So again, we are suggesting a value of no more than $2,590,000. And again, that's based on no dispute of any of the inputs. We're okay with them. It's just that cap rate that we think ought to be 6%. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Balderrama, do you have any questions?
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no question.
Mr. Seeling, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just wondered if you have actually toured and visited this property.
So I've not been inside. We try to visit properties and do interior inspections as best we can. In the COVID era, it's been a little bit. We've done less of them. I've certainly done less of them myself, but I have. I visited the exterior of the property as recently as, say, last weekend to get a sense of the general condition. I've done a desktop review of the property, and I have a familiarity with what we'll call the condition. I'm not making an adjustment beyond 6% for condition, to be fair, because I have not personally been inside of the units, and it very well may be. We may have a different conclusion in terms of the cap rate, where it may actually be higher. For the purpose of this report, we are suggesting a baseline cap rate for this property of this vintage, with this many buildings in this area, with this history of no economic profit of 6%. So no, I haven't, but I do feel very confident that if the 6% cap is quite fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no question.
And I don't either. So we've now done this one, so we can go on with our next property.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the values for this property, Mr. Balderrama said, doesn't match with the property we have on record.
I'm sorry, you know what, Mr. Kumar, can you please repeat that? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
The values of the property and Mr. Balderrama just said, it doesn't match the one we have on the record. Like I have on record, Mr. Balderrama is for 10G is 464 and 20G is 3,714,000.
I have them at 3,047,000, and this is from. Voters, I think this is correct. I think
This is correct.
I think the value that he's suggesting at 3,047,000. Maybe the breakdown is different.
Okay, because I just checked this assessment. Okay, it's different.
Okay, so we have a total, according to the information that we have before, I'm looking at the assessor's brief. We've got a total assessment of 4,315,000.
Is it 4
Is
million?
this for 421 Thames?
3,047,000.
3,047,000
Yeah.
is the total.
Okay, on the notice of assessment is 4,178,000.
Can you see that again? That's odd. No. No idea why that would be.
Okay, we're referring right now to our property at 265 Gordon Avenue, are we not?
Those 421 Thames.
James.
Oh, still 421 I'm sorry, okay. So what am I missing here?
Mr. Chair, is this a clarification from Mr. Kumar?
Yes.
I think it's a clarification, right? Yeah. Mr. Kumar, is it the total assessed value that you're clarifying?
No, actually, both of the values you just said is different from for what I have on record on the notes of assessment and on the application as well.
Yeah.
That's odd because we obviously work from the my properties
Yeah.
section.
And this is the same values we have in our system.
I'm not sure.
421 Thames.
421 Thames, yeah.
I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I just have what the the briefs indicate, and it shows a total assessment of 996,000.
For
21 things, it's 3,040,000.
3,047,000.
3,047,000.
I'm looking at assessment taxation's brief.
Yeah.
For 421 Thames Avenue.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. $3,470,000. Yes.
Yes,
That's
three.
what the total.
Yeah, but the value I have with me is different.
Do you have the workup? No, you wouldn't have the,
No.
how that would be worked out. This is news to me as well, so apologize, but this is all news.
You're going by the assessment in the system, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
That's weird.
This, yes.
So question, Mr. Kumar, that is coming from the application, you said?
Yeah, the application, but I also recorded it from AACS yesterday from our software. It was the same figures I have on the notice of assessment.
Yeah. It's showing on the tax chart from June, which is odd. So, Mr. Valderrama, do you have record of a supplementary being issued? Because that doesn't look like a sub to me, but
No, right now I don't have any file at the moment. So how do we proceed on this matter? Would you want to it's just the from amount, right?
yeah.
And then the application indicates that it's a different amount than what we were discussing.
Correct.
And on your request, Mr. Story, how much are you requesting total?
2,590,000, but that's of course predicated on the fact that we agree with the NOI.
Right.
So,
So 3,047,000 to 2 million, how much?
2,589,950 rounded to 2,590,000.
So that is still way higher than what's the application is indicating, right, Mr. Kumar?
No, the application is way higher than that.
Oh, it's way higher. How much is it?
My application says is 4,178,000 total assessment.
Can I see that?
This is the application required.
If we could take a recess potentially, I can
Yeah,
call our
yeah.
office and see
Okay,
what the NOI is, and then because we'll effectively be adjusting to the NOI to a
Mr. Diamond, could we take a recess?
Yeah, I think we'll have to, and I think Mr. Valderrama, you have to get,
Yes.
that street out and let us know where we should be at.
Okay.
That's a good
So-
suggestion. Let's have a recess. Yeah.
Let's have a recess for, I guess, 10 minutes.
Be alive, Mr. Chair. Be alive, Mr. Chair.
Yes?
Be alive.
Okay. Okay, hang on just a minute. You know what? I lost everything here. I got to go back just a minute.
Oh.
Yeah. I by mistake got out of this. Let's see if I still have it. Hang on. Okay. Okay, I got it back from my email, I'm pretty sure. Okay, I'm back. Okay. So we're next then dealing with item number 4, which is 265 Gordon Avenue. And Mr. Valderrama, you can proceed when you're ready.
265 Gordon. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1074. The roll number is 14083750200. The property is located at 265 Gordon Avenue. We're dealing with the 2023 roll year using reference date of April 1st, 2021. Property has split assessment. The first one has an assessed value of $2,449,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of grant. The next assessment has an assessed value of $1,866,000 with a classification of residential 1 and a liability of grant. The property is a commercial row house with 9 buildings, 1 to 2 stories, an actual year and effective year 72. It has 37 suites, has 22 outdoor parking. The zoning is residential 2 family. It has a land area of 123,206 square feet, a planned area of 21,133 square feet, basement area of 20,869 square feet, a gross floor area of 62,871 square feet. And on page 3, I do have the photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 37 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,221.94. There are, again, as mentioned earlier, there are split assessments on this one. The first one has a gross potential rent of $234,612. Has a vacancy rate of 3.2%. In terms of dollars, that is $7,508. That leads to an effective gross income of $227,104. Applying the expense ratio of 56.86% or $129,131, the net operating income is $97,973. Using the cap rate of 5.25%, the capitalized income for this property is for this assessment is $1,866,152. The next assessment, or 20G column, has a gross potential rent of $307,929. Has a vacancy rate of 3.2%. Vacancy, or in terms of dollars, that is $9,854. It has an effective gross income of $298,075. Applying the expense ratio of 56.86% or $169,485, the net operating income is $128,590. Using the capitalization rate of 5.25%, the capitalized income is $2,449,333. On the next page is the rent comparables. Looks like they are all similar to or the same rent comparables as the previous properties that we have already heard. And the next page has the map of the subject property and the comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence or the sales. And from page 9 onwards is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Again, this is very similar to many of the properties. So just point out or asking Mr. Boardroom on page 1, we see the effective year built of 72 and the actual year built of 72. So there's no variance applied by the city. Is that correct?
None.
Okay, and has somebody from the city since 1972 visited this property to get a sense of condition or location or any such thing?
I'm not aware. No.
Okay. Can we agree that, well, hold on. In the income and expenses, we see that this property is in fact inclusive of 4 or 5 bedroom units, correct?
On the where income and expense mailer?
Yes, what's been submitted traditionally by the owner, they show 9 2-bedrooms, 17 3-bedrooms, and what we're, we typically call 4-bedroom plus, that there are 7 4-bedrooms and 4 5-bedrooms. Are you aware of that?
It says in their income and expense mailer. Yes.
Okay, and can we agree that in the market for Winnipeg, there's not a strong appetite typically for 5-bedroom apartments? That would be outside, that would be anomalous in terms of private market apartments. Is that a fair comment?
I am not. I have no information on that.
Okay.
I couldn't answer that question.
That's okay. Mr. Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions? Ms. McFadden?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, do you have questions?
I don't have any question.
You don't have any questions? Okay. Mr. Silent, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Valderrama, I noticed that question that Mr. asked you, and I'm looking at it. So there's 7 4-bedroom suites and 4 5-bedroom suites. So that is unusual, isn't it?
Well, there could be a few that have these, but I'm just not aware of how many they are, Mr. Chair. So I talking about unusual. It's not common.
Yeah, and I suppose that they might be harder to rent because not that many people need 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom suites. Would you agree?
There could be some renters out there. However, the question that should be posed is there any actual vacancies on this property? If there's none, then they are rented. They can be rented.
And I guess even if somebody has a 5-bedroom suite, it probably wouldn't rent for less than a 2-bedroom suite.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's my question. So, Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so 265 Gordon, again, social housing geared to families, which is why we see this anomalous suite mix typically. And I will point out on, let's say, page 5 of my brief, you can see that the suite mix is anomalous, but sort of the amount of buildings. This is a huge complex. There are a large number of buildings here, and I'm going to suggest to you that ought to carry a higher cap rate, even if we weren't talking about social housing. The prospect of an investment where we had, well, what are we saying, 9 buildings on site would denote a higher risk profile for this property at a minimum. So you will notice that we have adjusted our cap rate 25 basis points higher than the previous ones that we've looked at. We've talked about 6% cap rates, and those have been on smaller properties. Again, I will reiterate, we recognize the board orders that I've mentioned. One of them, in fact, is on referencing Blake Street, which is similar in terms of its makeup, in terms that it would not be it would not be as desirable to a purchaser in the private grade open market, based on the fact that it is family housing. So multiple buildings to maintain, anomalous suite mixes, wood frame, row housing. So a number of factors at play here, but we're very comfortable in applying a cap rate of 6.25%. Vacancy. Now, Mr. Boardroom had mentioned that there's no vacancy, but of course there's no vacancy. This is social housing. There's typically a waiting list for folks to get these resources. So it's not appropriate necessarily to talk about vacancy versus the private market when we're looking at these assets. And I do point out that the city, and we are using 3.2%, which is commensurate generally with the area. However, vacancy, from my mind at least, should typically go up once we hit sort of what we'll call diminishing returns past 4 or 5 bedrooms, as you rightly pointed out, Mr. Chair. So all of the risk that we've illustrated here in this property, we've considered in the cap rate. And so we've applied a cap rate of 6.25%. That gives us an estimated market value at the reference date of $3,625,008, which we then round to $3,625,000. Again, we're very, very comfortable with that 6.25 cap. This property is very specific, purpose-built. And with that, I thank you and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Asino, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fad, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Story, so if you have a bedroom suite, there are segments of society that require that many bedrooms, where you have grandparents or uncles or aunts living with a family, or just a lot of children. Would you agree?
Yeah, there are some folks who would find utility in that. I would suggest that it's a smaller slice of the rental market, but sure, I'm not saying that they're not that somebody wouldn't find utility out of them, but there would be let's say a law of diminishing returns where a 2-bedroom suite would be economically the most efficient, let's say. But to be certain, I'm sure there are folks who would find utility in a 5-bedroom suite.
Yeah, some people would even use it as an office or for storage. But the fact of the matter is the city's workup doesn't really charge more for those suites. So they're not, they're basically just equating them as 2-bedroom suites in the workup, are they not?
They are. We have to consider too, though, if we were to look at a 5-bed. So if we look at CMHC, they're not going to have rents of any quality for 5-bedroom suites. They will not have quality data above 3-bedroom suites typically. Then we'll also have to consider that in those 5-bedroom suites, they'll have a couple in the basement. So then we'll have to start considering factoring that back as well. So the rent is not in dispute. I appreciate your comments. I think you're right. Typically, a larger suite will rent for more, but I think that from a developer's perspective or an owner's perspective, this suite mix would be considered inferior to what we see in the market, and that's quite well. And that's why we don't see a great deal of new builds with 4 or 5 bedroom.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, Mr. Story, because I know there are not a lot of opportunities to rent suites that big in the city. There's somebody who needs it is going to have a place to find it in this building.
Fair enough, and I suppose you're right. If typically when people are looking for that amount of space, they might be looking to a detached house as opposed to an apartment rental. But yeah, that's a fair comment.
It's almost like a person who needs a 17 size foot shoe. They're not going to be a lot of ability to find them anywhere, but if somebody finds one, they'll buy it because
there are less of them, so
they're difficult to find for the people who need them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's this property. So we'll go on with our next one, which is 460 Martin Avenue. Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready. Mr. Valderrama?
Yeah, mute, Mr. Boardroom.
Sorry, if I may clarify, it's 460 Martin, right?
Yes.
Just a minute.
Martin.
460 Martin
Avenue.
Avenue West, correct.
And the next property has a file number of 22-1585. That's a roll number of 14099997700. The property is located at 460 Martin Avenue West. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. Using reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value is $1,539,000. The property is classified as a residential 1 with a liability of grant. The property is a commercial row housing with 14 buildings, 2 stories, an actual year built and effective year built of 1977. It has 14 suites. It is zoned as R2 or residential 2 family. Has a land area of 33,049 square feet, a plan area of 7,140 square feet, a basement area of 6,188 square feet, and a gross floor area of 19,516 square feet. On page 3 is the photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 14 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $915.52. The gross potential rent is $153,807. Applying the vacancy rate of 3 or vacancy in terms of dollars of 4,922. The effective gross income is $148,800. Using the expense ratio of 58.64% or $87,306, the net operating income is $61,579. Applying the capitalization rate of 4%, the capitalized income is $1,500,475 or $1,539,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5, I do have some rent comparables. They are similar to or the same as the previous or this properties that we heard so far. And on page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. Page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And on page 9 onwards, that's where the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr. Valderrama, this is all modeled. So there's no overrides. This is just a modeled assessment, right?
Yes, they're model derived income workup.
I heard you say that there are 14 buildings, but there are 7 buildings. Is that correct?
There are 14 units.
14 units, but 7 buildings, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so it's erroneous on number of buildings on page 1, according to 14. But is it your understanding, would that have any impact on the model, to your knowledge?
I am not aware of any impacts with regard to that.
And then just very quickly, is the model capable of capturing what I'm going to call locational or external factors the way the market would, by any chance?
I have no information on that one.
Are you aware that if we go to page 3, if we look to the westernmost side of this property, this property abuts the I believe it's called it's a hydro substation. Are you aware of that? Runs right up against the hydro substation.
Hydro substation. I'm not sure what that is now.
Okay, that's fine. And of course, this 4% cap rate falls well below what you've shown us for the 20th percentile. So can you give me a sense as to why this property would be presumably, if the cap rate is the risk factor, then why is it so low compared to what we might see of let's say a high rise that's brand new in a better area? How is it possible that the model is assigning a 4% cap rate to this property?
Again, it's not just limited. The cap rate is not just a risk factor, or it's not just limited to age, location, or size of the property. I mean, those are just the typical ones. There could be more than those, among others. There could be some other factors that the model is taking into account, which I have no information of.
Okay, so just to summarize, you don't have any information as to why the model is ascribing this property such a low, correct?
None.
Okay, those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
I think my questions have been answered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
My question has been answered as well.
Okay. And I don't think I have any questions either. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Story, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this property we're still in the Chalmers, Elmwood East K area. Property was built in 1977. There are indeed 14 3-bedroom suites, and these would be best described as a row of side-by-side housing. So they're 2 units and they're detached. So it's not like a typical row house where every unit has conjoining walls, but rather a set of 7 buildings, 2 units per building. So, okay. Again, they're built in 77. They're wood frame, they're stucco, they're judging by the photos, you can see there's some what we'll call some issues with condition on the exterior at a minimum. And locationally on my page 3, you can see that we right into that Martin Avenue substation, which I think from a market perspective would not be seen as a positive. However, we've not made specific adjustments for these factors. We've been consistent. We have these 1970s social row houses, and we're suggesting that cap rates of 6% typically are appropriate when we have properties that are much larger with multiple buildings. We tend to adjust upwards by 25 basis points. So in this case, though we have multiple buildings, though we have conditional issues, I think we've been very conservative in applying a cap rate of 6%. Again, the assessed income and expense is within range, and for the interest of narrowing our issues and for the purpose of our discussions today, we are suggesting that a 4% cap rate for this property bears no relation to market behavior. And even a 6% cap rate may be low, but we are comfortable with the resulting value of $1,026,000. And again, that's all based on that adjusted cap rate to 6%. So we've said it all in terms of these types of properties. So that's my presentation. Again, our request is that the board adjust the cap rate to 6%. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Valderrama?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, no.
Mr. Seelan, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And I don't either. Thank you very much. And so then we can proceed with our next property, which is at 1415 Rothesay.
Mr. Chair,
We're ready.
did we want to take a break here, Mr. Chair?
Okay, if everybody would like to take a break now, we could take one. How much time do you think you need, Mr. Seelan? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
At 5 or 10, your choice.
Okay, well, a 5-minute break, if that'll suffice, we can do that now.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Kumar? Okay, so we're now back and we're ready to proceed then on our next property, which is the property at 1415 Rothesay Street. Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1665. The roll number 04-001-732-700. The property is located at 1415 Rothesay Street. The roll year for this assessment is 2023. I'm using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $2,571,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is with 3 buildings, 2 stories, an actual and effective year built of 1975. It has 22 suites with 24 outdoor parking. It is zoned as RMFS or residential multifamily. It has a land area of 48,257 square feet, a planned area of 9,836 square feet, a basement area of 9,836 square feet, and a gross floor area of 29,508 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation workup. The property has 22 total units. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,104.51. Has a gross potential rent of $291,591. Applying the vacancy rate of 3.2% or $9,331. The effective gross income is $282,260. Using the expense ratio of 54.46% expense or $153,719. The net operating income is $128,541. Applying the capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized income is $2,570,820, or $2,571,000 rounded. The rent comparables for the subject property are on page 5. There are 3. They're pretty much similar to the previous ones that we've heard. On page 6 is where the map of the subject property and comparable rents are. And on page 7 are the capitalization rates chart. And page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. From page 9 onwards is where the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Story?
I suppose my only question, and no, I think I'm okay. I think I'll make my comments in my presentation. No questions from the assessor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
No question, thank you.
Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I don't either. So, Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you very much. And just so the board is aware, we've been dealing with social housing today, but this one is indeed a private townhouse. So this one is slightly different, similar in terms of construction type, but it does have that fact that it is private, so we should consider that. So this property is located at 1415 Rothesay. Again, it's multi-building, it's got 3 buildings on site. It is wood frame, which I mentioned, would be on we'll call the lower end of the construction material side. And we're in Rossmere in East Kelowna. The improvements were built in 1975. I noticed that neither Altus nor the assessor makes any variant to that age. So we're suggesting 1975 is appropriate. Again, 22 2-bedroom suites with 24 outdoor parking stalls. The site is somewhat irregular in shape, and the size is 48,257. Now, in terms of our position, we are not terribly far off. The assessor is suggesting $2,571,000. We're suggesting $2.3 million. But in terms of our methodology, just follow me very quickly to page 10. You can see we've looked to 3 years of income and expense data. We've included some data from 17 as well. But in terms of private market apartments, our methodology is to take 3 years of income and expenses and then to stabilize them into what we'll call a typical year. Now, not to belabor this, because I do note that if you go all the way down to the line 33, our NOI is actually slightly higher than the model. So I'm not questioning the assessor on the model in this instance. We've done our own assessment by hand here by reviewing the 3 years. So our NOI is indeed slightly higher than the assessor. We're at 132,262. Where we differ yet again is on the cap rate. So the assessor is suggesting 5%. We are suggesting to you that a 5% cap rate would be on the extremely low end, typically reserved for newer properties, vertical, called high rises, with amenities and perhaps not wood frame construction. So we do recognize that the property is 47 years old. We do recognize that there are multiple buildings. And so we've looked to our cap rate conclusions that are on page 8. And we have adjusted this property, or we've applied a cap rate for this property slightly above our typical cap rates. We've used 5.75. We would typically use 5.5, but as I've mentioned, we do recognize that commercial row houses, in this case, private townhouses, do represent a slightly different economic opportunity to a purchaser, and they are tantamount to carrying a slightly higher risk profile. So we believe that in terms of the market, as we reviewed it, in terms of the findings of our cap rate study, we're comfortable with 5.75%. So again, we do respectfully submit that the value for this cycle not exceed $2.3 million, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Story, so, I know that the city has no improvements since building, which is something that you've maintained for your increased cap rate, but I'm looking at the photographs that you've submitted.
Yeah.
And I know they're exterior, but they make the property look pretty presentable. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I would agree. I would agree that there's no adjustment for condition, and Mr. Chair, very clearly, the what we'll call the bones of the buildings are indeed from 1975. So we're not suggesting that there should be any adjustment for condition. We're simply suggesting that the vintage of this property is 1975. When we bifurcate our cap rate table, that we're not adjusting for condition, but we do apply a slight premium for row houses effectively. So that's the only adjustment that we've made on this one, but I agree with you, they're maintained, they look presentable. There's no issue with the rents, and that's all been captured, and that's perhaps why we have a slightly higher NOI than the model. So yeah, no issue on condition there.
Yeah, and why would a row house be less desirable than an apartment building to a renter?
Well, not to a renter, but to an owner. So
I know, but an owner wants a property that a tenant is going to be gravitated towards, would they not?
that is correct. Yeah, absolutely. But our contention is that when you have multiple buildings, each unit is going to have its own hot water tank. Each unit has its own HVAC, presumably. There's more roof area to take care of. You have
that might be why you're getting a higher NOI than the model is presenting. Because you have all these features.
Yeah, I think we have. I think the best way to look at a row house like this on the private market is that yes, they may be more desirable to tenants, but they may not be the most efficient, let's say, economic opportunity to an owner. We can agree that typically if you build vertically, that would be more efficient than building out. So, and I think that's probably why we see most of these built in the 70s when land costs were less of a concern, building costs were less of a concern.
And looking at this property, it looks to me like the units are all side by side. So technically, the owner could register a new plan of subdivision and divide them into single units and sell them off as individual units with party walls between them.
In terms of condominiumizing?
Yeah.
Yeah, presumably.
You wouldn't even have to do that. They could have separate titles for each of them. On a subdivision.
Sure, and that's fair, but we're looking at them as apartments. So
I know, but there is a highest and best use, and okay, and it's a desirable area. We're in Rossmere now, not Elmwood anymore.
It would be more desirable than the previous location. It would be more desirable, I would suggest, than the previous properties that we've looked at, and the next couple that we're going to look at. Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my questions. Okay, so our next property then is at 715 Alta. And Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1579. The roll number is 0206120900. The property is located at 715 Lualda Street. We're dealing with 2023, using reference date of April 1st, 2021. There are split assessments on this property. The first assessment has an assessed value of $5,604,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of grant. The next assessment has an assessed value of $896,000. The classification is residential 1 with a liability of grant. The property is a commercial row housing buildings with 1 to 2 stories, actual and effective year built of 1971. It has 58 suites with 58 outdoor. The zoning for this property is residential multifamily. It has a land area of 150,847 square feet, a planned area of 30,336 square feet, a gross floor area of 60,408 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation workup. Again, the property has 58 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,174.25. Again, there are two split assessments on this one. The first one, under the column of 10G, the gross potential rent is $112,728. Vacancy rate 0.2% or $3,607. The effective gross income is $109,121. An expense ratio of 56.86% or $62,046. The net operating income would come down to $47,075. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.25%, the capitalized income is $896,666 or $897,000. For the next assessment, under the 20G column, the gross potential rent is $704,550. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $22,546. Has an effective gross income of $682,004. Applying the expense ratio of 56.86%, the expense or $387,787. Operating income is $294,217. The capitalization rate is 5.25%. When applied to the net operating income, the capitalized income is $5,604,000. $5,604,133 or $5,604,000 rounded. The next page is the rent comparables, a few of them. These are all the same as the previous ones we've heard. On page 6 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence. And beginning page 8 onwards is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think my questions for this property have been asked and answered in the previous properties that are very, very similar. So I'll just ask that that those comments and questions carry forward. So no specific questions to the assessor on this property. I'll save my comments for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
And I don't either. So, Mr. Story, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, so again, we have another social housing family complex. Let's say we have 11 buildings on site this time. It is indeed a commercial row house. It was indeed built in the early 70s as a purpose-built asset, and it is wood frame with stucco on the exterior. So, all right. So we're in Valley Gardens now. So this is on Welda between Kimberley and Concordia. This would be considered East Kildonan. Yeah, so effectively we have 48 3-bedroom suites and 10 4-bedroom suites for a total of 58 units. Now, we're not suggesting that there isn't any utility from that type of suite mix, but we are suggesting that it is odd. And it is, I think it just speaks to the fact that this property was not built to satisfy the needs of the market, but rather was built as a purpose-built social housing for families. Again, we do believe that the cap rate that's been applied here is far too low and have adjusted it upwards. Now, again, we've seen cap rates typically from Malta suggesting, based on our study and based on the directives of the municipal board, that we ought to adjust cap rates upward from market. We're suggesting that the cap rate here, based on the fact that we have wood frame, commercial row house, multiple buildings, social housing with 51 years of no economic profit, we're suggesting a cap rate of no less than 6.25%. So with using the 6.25% and agreeing to the NOI in theory for this cycle of 341,292, we come to an indicated market value of 5,460,672, which we of course round to 5,461,000. And again, just based on many of the comments that I've made for the preceding files, and suffice to say, we are adjusting the cap rate to reflect the site-specific nature of this property. And again, the value in our opinion should not exceed 5,461,000. And I'm open to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, do you have any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seelan, do you have any questions?
Yes, have you been to see this property?
You know what? I don't recall if I've been past this property. It's very similar to a number of these that I handle. I don't believe that I visited for the purpose of this for our discussion today. But again, it's very similar to many of the properties that we're looking at. So I certainly didn't do interior inspections, but I have done a desktop inspection of this property, and I believe that I've been past it, but I don't want to say for fear that I'm misremembering. But I feel very comfortable with their cap rate. But no, I've certainly not been inside this property, for example.
How would you compare, or how would you rate the neighborhood?
Well, I mean, compared to, for example, Kate or Logan, it would be superior. It would be superior, I would suggest, to Chalmers and Elmwood. That's sort of my own understanding. So
would this be a desirable neighborhood?
It would certainly be more desirable than some of the other properties that we talked about in Elmwood. But in terms of if this property went onto the market, and we're understanding that cap rates, as we mentioned, are in that range, it would likely command a premium for the reasons that we've outlined. It's an older property, it's wood frame. There are many buildings on site to maintain, which is not desirable to an owner. The suite mix is inferior. So those are factors that would have to be considered for in a site-specific analysis of this property. So even if location is less of a concern than some of the others that we're talking about, the physical nature of this property would give an ex-prudent purchaser some pause, I would suggest.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I think mine has been answered. Thank you.
And I too think so. So thank you very much. And we'll now go on to our next property, which is 160 Kate Street. And Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1112. The roll number is 13070253000. Property is located at 160 Kate Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. I'm using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $428,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with the liability of grant. The property is a commercial row house in 2 stories, an actual and effective year built of 1987. It has 5 suites, 5 outdoor parking. It is zoned as residential multifamily with a land area of 10,946 square feet, a planned area of 2,480 square feet, and a gross floor area of 4,960 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 5 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $862.27. The gross potential rent is $51,736. The vacancy rate is 3.2% or $1,656. The effective gross income is $50,080. The expense ratio is 56.86%, which is $28,475. The net operating income is $105. The capitalization rate applied is 5.05%. The capitalized income is $427,822 or $428,000 rounded. On page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 70 Isabel Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,282. The second rent comparable is located at 530 Ross Avenue. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,325. The last one is located at 600 Ross Avenue. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $753. And the next page is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rates chart. And on page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. On pages 9 onwards is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
I have but a few, Mr. Chair. Mr. Valderrama, can we agree that this location would be considered a negative? It would be considered an inferior location in terms of the city of Winnipeg. Would you agree with me?
Street, well, it's in the inner city. It's just it's a busy area. I understand that. Inferior to a lot of areas, and yeah, I would agree in some ways.
Okay, so this, just to be clear though, this is west of Isabel, southwest of the Freight House. It's not particularly busy. It's just we can agree that let's say the built environment in this neighborhood is it's fair to say there's some issues. Is that okay, or would you agree with that?
Again, I mean, when we outside of my rent comparables, maybe there could be some that would be better ones out there.
Okay. Not saying the rent, but just your rent comparables, are those selected by you or are those selected by the model?
I selected them.
Okay, because number 2, that would be very high. I would suggest, would you agree that $1,300 for a subject property, that would be almost impossible, would it not?
Well, this is what's going on around. There's also the Ross Avenue, and then there's also one on Ross that's really low. So I mean, it all depends on how the market is looking at the rents.
Okay, all right. That cap rate is modeled, correct?
Yes, cap rate is model derived.
How does the cap rate? I suppose I should ask, does the cap rate apply for location? And can you give us a sense of what sort of locational premium might be applied by the model if it does indeed consider location?
As I've mentioned earlier, I mean, cap rate, the model can assign cap rate based on a lot of factors. 3 of which I've mentioned already, and some others that may have been considered that I may not be aware about. So they could be, again, age, location, and the size of the property. Among those, or among others that I haven't mentioned or I haven't have no information about.
Okay.
There could be a lot others.
Okay, and just finally, not to belabor this, but do you think in the eyes of the market that this property would be seen as a riskier investment from a purchaser?
I am not sure how market sees what is riskier, what is riskiest, or what is less risk.
Okay. Oh, okay.
This one.
Those are my questions.
This one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Sealand, do you have any questions?
Yes, have you seen this property? Have you had a chance to inspect it?
No, I haven't been in there. I haven't had the chance to inspect the property, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's any questions.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Valderrama, I'm looking at your comparables, and your first comparable is the property at 70 Isabel Street.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I note from that property that it was built in 2014, so it's quite a bit newer than the subject. Would you agree?
That's correct.
And that would probably enable the landlord to probably maybe charge more rent because it's newer construction and probably more up to date.
Probably. I'm not sure what the motivation or what the landlord is thinking in asking for, but this is what the market is out there. So for
Yeah, oh.
that kind of, or that age of property, age range.
Yeah,
I should say.
okay, well, then your next comparable was built in 2017,
It's pretty
and
close.
so that's even newer. And I see that the square footage of each unit is like almost, well, certainly 50% larger at least than the subject property and the other comparables as well.
Correct.
And
That's
that
correct,
also would
Mr. Chair.
result in a higher rent. Would you not agree?
I'm
And that's
not
probably
sure
why
if
this
I'm
one's
going to
multiplier
base it.
1325.
I'm not sure if I could base it because it's a 1,500 square feet. It's a minor difference to 929 square feet, to be honest, on 70 Isabel. If we look at the average monthly rent per unit on looking at these two comparables, they're just within $40 range, $43. And yet their gross floor area.
No, I agree that your first comparable has got a similar square footage. I'm talking about your second property where the square footage is considerably larger and the building is actually even newer.
Right. And and with regard to the in relation to the average monthly rent per unit, which is just over $43 to the first, which has lower gross floor area, I wouldn't be able to conclude that the higher rent was based mainly because it is a 1,500 square foot unit.
Yeah, okay. Well, and in all fairness, your comparable number 3 is an older property with roughly the same square footage, and the rent isn't that different. So,
and it has 2-bedroom units instead of 3-bedroom units.
yeah. Okay, thank you. You answered my questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can then go on with our last property. Oh, sorry, Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Story. You can proceed then with your.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much. Sure. All right. So here we are on Cade Street. We have a property that was built in 1987. And Mr. Chair, I was listening to your questions with the assessor. Just to be clear, we're not fighting the rent, but properties built after 2015 are indeed exempt from rent control. So with older properties, it is sort of a it's maybe not appropriate to use properties that are outside of rent control, properties that are under that condition. So just going very quickly, this property was built in 1987. I have not been inside of the property, but I have been through this area many times. We handle a number of properties in this general area. And actually, I drove past it to have a look once again, just to refresh my memory on the way in today. So I feel very confident in our assessment of this property. The city is suggesting 428. We are suggesting 360. Now, we've used a cap rate of 6% yet again. You'll notice that this property is from the it's called the early 1980s as opposed to the 1970s. However, this property will have will carry a higher risk profile based on the location. That is certain. Again, social housing, no amenities. The property is 35 years old with no history of economic profit. We would suggest that the condition would be inferior and the location would be a consideration. So with that, we apply a cap rate of only 6% to recognize that there's an elevated risk. 5.05 again, that's the type of cap rate typically we presumably see on a newer high rise or so in a better area. So 5.05% is outside of the range of for what this property how it would be seen, but we understand that it's the model, so we're just suggesting that be adjusted to a value of $360,083, rounded to $360,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
So in comparison to the last property, the cap rate you're using here is 6%. How are you considering the location compared to the last property?
Well, great question. So as I mentioned very briefly in my cap rate study, we have these external factors that we consider and we adjust for. The previous property was from, I believe it was 1971, so it's slightly older. This property is slightly newer.
Right.
So I agree. I personally think that perhaps the property on K Street ought to carry a higher cap rate.
Okay.
But I think very conservatively, when we look at the value that we're coming to, we also have to consider that we're not getting into land value less demolition as well.
Sure.
So I think that the value of $360,000 is fair, even if the cap rate may be slightly lower. And I suppose the area is more of a condition than the age, all things held equal.
It's also one building compared to 11 buildings.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question.
Thank you. I don't have any questions on this one, so thank you. So we can then proceed to our next property. And that is our property at 444 Logan Avenue. When you're ready, Mr. Valderrama.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1971. It has a roll number of 130815100. It is located at 444 Logan Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $499,000. This classified as a residential 1 with a liability of taxable. The property is a commercial row house with 2 buildings and 2 stories. Has actual years built of 1894 to 1990 and effective years built of 1950 to 1990. It has 5 suites with 5 outdoor parking. It has a residential 2 as a zoning, 2 family, residential 2 family. It has a land area of 12,251 square feet, a plan area of 3,556 square feet, and a gross floor area of 7,112 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 4 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,089.52. The gross potential rent is $65,371. Using a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $2,092. The effective gross income is $63,279. Applying expense ratio of 58.64% or $37,107. The net operating income is $26,172. Now applying the capitalization rate of 5.25%, the capitalized income is $498,514 or $499,000 rounded. On page 5 are some rent comparables. These are the same rent comparables that were discussed in the previous property. On page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And on page 9 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
No, I think I've asked all the questions. I came in with, I think that this one, I'll reserve my comments for my presentation. So no questions for the assessor. No, I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I do have a question. I noticed that on your very first page, you've indicated that the property was built between 1894 and 1990. Can you tell me what percentage of the property was built at the earlier date?
Without looking at the permits on this one and some more information, I wouldn't be able to say how much percentage is the older one compared to the newer one.
Okay, no, I'm looking at, I don't know either, and I think it's important because would you agree that a property that was built in 1894 would ordinarily, even by the model, have a much higher capitalization rate?
I believe it was taken into account. If I look at the picture on page 3 of my brief, it looks like 444, that dot right there might be the older one, which was, I'm assuming, renovated because it was bumped up to 1950. And then the 1990 would be the ones with the 266, 268, 270, 272 dots right there. Without really inspecting it, I'm just looking at the pictures.
Okay, would you consider the fact that it's on Logan Avenue as being a detriment or an asset to the property?
Being on Logan Avenue would be a detriment. Is that the question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, would you agree, or do you think it's a good location, or a location that would limit the rental potential of the property?
Well, it's hard to determine what the market would say as what would be detrimental or not in renting a property. Yes, this could be in well, a little bit less in a little bit inferior location compared to some other locations in the city. However, I mean, there's a demand definitely for a property like this, and especially when you have a low rent. So it will attract those in the market that are looking for lower rents. And being on Logan Avenue, would that be detrimental? It depends on how you see it. Some would see it half glass, the glass half full or half empty, right? Some people, this is a main road, would be good because there might be buses passing or whatever, or I mean, transportation wise, or it's easier access, or there could be a lot of factors. It's hard to determine really what detriments are considered by the market.
Okay, you'd agree that all your comparables have much later effective years built than the such a property, except for maybe number 4, but even that, or number 3 comparable, but even that, the effective year 1950, that would be the renovation of the older property that was, I think you said 1894, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It could be, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's my question. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address a couple of things you just mentioned. So this property is unique in that it's a row house, which is there's a typical row house building built in 1990. And that's on Laura. So this is the corner of Logan and Laura. I will agree with you. It would be considered an inferior location, to be certain. Now that property, that 1894, there's a grade 3 heritage structure. It's called Penrose House. It was moved from Bell Avenue, 200 block of Bell Avenue. It is indeed a grade 3 heritage property that now forms part of this grouping. So that is why the initial age is 1894. It's based on the fact that Penrose House was moved from Bell Avenue to the corner of Laura and Logan, and it is now encompassed in this assessment. So just so we're clear, that's why. And on page 30 of my brief, you can see Penrose House, and it is indeed grade 3 heritage. So we haven't adjusted upward for the heritage designation, though I think it is typically appropriate. This property has had renovations through the interior, from what I understand. So we're comfortable with our overall cap rate. So we've looked at this property. We have very good income and expense data. Of course, the expense data is more what we're interested in here. We're accepting the EGI of 63,279 as proposed by the assessor. Again, that is a function of recognizing that these would be this is a social housing asset, and the rents should be deflated from CMHC. We do not dispute that. We're okay with 63,279 as assessed. We do look to our expenses here. You'll see that our R&M, our repair and maintenance, is reasonably high at 2,983 per door. We're using the actuals. Our actuals come to 62.2%, where the model is suggesting 58.6%. But ultimately, our actual expenses, when stabilized, are calculated as 39,365. So it's just a touch north of the model's 37,107. Again, we are applying a cap rate of 6%. That gives us an indicated market value of 399,000. I think that cap rate is in our valuation is somewhat low, but ultimately the resulting value of 399 I think is very, very fair, and we do respectfully submit that the assessment be adjusted on that basis. So again, 399, and the major issues here are slight adjustment to the expense ratio based on actuals versus the assessor's model, and then an adjustment to the cap rate of 6%. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Bolarama?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
No question.
And I don't either. So I believe then that all matters on our docket today have been dealt with. So I'm going to close this hearing, and you'll both receive our decisions in short order.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.